welcome to Virtual Book Signing. I'm Daniel Weinberg, and as always, we're at the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop in Chicago. It's as well if you're watching on the archive. I hope you won't be able to email in, but we may have books still left over for you to purchase if you'd like. I guess we're going to get to whom we have here today. I'm happy to have two authors that are kind of conjoined in this particular series. So Ken Winkle, who is the Thomas C. Sorensen Professor of American History at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. He's the author of 3 prize-winning books, The Politics of Community, Migrations and Politics in Antebellum, Ohio, The Young Eagle, The Rise of Abraham Lincoln, which is a terrific book and won the Abraham Lincoln Institute Book Award, the Oxford Atlas of the Civil War, and he's published over 20 articles in various publications. Currently writing about the Lincoln family during the Civil War in the Citadel. His latest book is part of the Concise Lincoln Library series, Abraham and Mary Lincoln, and Southern Illinois University Press. It's 147 pages, $19.95 as each of them are. And this is just a terrific series, and if you don't know the series, you might start out with this book, you'll love it, and then get the others. If you are missing some, you might want to come to us and get a book and keep the series going for yourself. I think this will be something for the bookshelf for the future. So, Abraham and Mary. We also have Jason Emerson, a journalist and independent historian. He's a former National Park Service park ranger at the Lincoln Home National Historic Site. He's the author also of The Madness of Mary Lincoln, which was the Illinois State Historical Society Book of the Year in 2007. Also Lincoln the Inventor. He's the editor of The Dark Days of Abraham Lincoln's Widow, as revealed by her own letters, and has numerous articles and book reviews that have appeared in academic journals and popular magazines. Well, today, a book we've been looking forward to for some years, Giant in the Shadows, The Life of Robert T. Lincoln. Again, Southern Illinois University Press, 600 pages, $39.95. So this is a major work, and the first one since Goff's book in 1969. So it's been a while, and it's certainly a good 2-3 times as large and has as much more research as well. As always, I usually ask each of you to begin by telling us how you got to this particular book, why now, and Ken, why don't we start with you? I love these concise books, by the way. Did you enjoy writing this crisply?
No, I did not.
Uh-huh. Well, it came across very well.
Thank you. Well, one of my favorite anecdotes comes from Mark Twain, who wrote a letter, and he opened it by apologizing. I'm sorry I wrote such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one. Brevity requires making decisions, deciding what is important, what is most important, what is not so important to the story and can be saved for later. This book is an attempt to boil down what we know, what I believe about the marriage of Abraham and Mary Lincoln, and present the essentials in a concise format that readers can enjoy, read briefly, and come to a greater understanding of the marriage and the 2 partners involved, and then do additional reading.
Others have tried this, and I think it's maybe easier, if it's any solace to you, that it's probably easier just to get to a concise book that you've not done before than to have something you've done in 7 volumes like Douglas Southall Freeman, then has to come down to 1 volume. How do you get that down? So that's always a problem. But all of these books in the concise series really do well. So how did they get to you on this book?
About 10 years ago, I wrote a biography of Abraham Lincoln up to the presidency.
Young Eagle.
Yes. It was a very lengthy book. I wanted to focus on Lincoln, but not exclusively, putting him in the context of the people who influenced him, both the great and the unknown. I was surprised that Mary Lincoln took such a prominent role as I was writing. Time after time, she played a paramount influence on his personal life, of course, but also his career, and especially his political career and presidency.
So that's how this book came about. You know, the one thing that I personally don't care for is that the lack of footnotes. And are there footnotes on the web that one could go to SIU or something? Is that, do they do that?
Not to my knowledge.
Run with that. Tell me to do that. I think that's
Maybe they will now, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. It'd be a good idea, SIU, to put footnotes on the web. Well, all right. So, Jason, here we are with that major book that was stopped by the Insanity Papers that
Yes.
came out, but gave you more knowledge, I presume, to go ahead with Robert. And it's a major opus.
It is.
What was the methodology of your research? First of all, why Robert? How did you personally get to Robert? And what was your methodology?
I got to Robert just, I wish I could point to the specific moment. Basically, I read Goff's book, went to Hildene in Vermont, and somewhere along the line I read something that the Republican Party wanted Robert to run for president 5 times, which I had never heard of, and I thought it was just utterly fascinating. So I did research, wrote an article, and as I researched that, I found the wonderful story, Edwin Booth saved Robert Lincoln's life in 1863, which is a true story. Wrote an article. As I researched that, I found more, and I just kept finding all over the place all this information about Robert, unused, unknown, unwritten about, and I kept churning out these articles, and then one day I thought, I should probably just write a book since there hasn't been one, and I prefer to write books that haven't been written ad nauseum. So, Lincoln the Inventor has never been written other than my book, and Madness of Mary, only one book, The Insanity File, 25 years ago. So, it just seemed to fit. I thought Robert was interesting and overshadowed. So the book took me a little less than 10 years to write it. And it was, I traveled all over the country. I always go to archives.
Why was there so much that was unknown and that you were able to tap that had never been tapped before?
Well, there's a couple reasons. The Robert's letterpress books, which are 72 volumes, I think it's 20,000 pages of his letters from 1867, I believe, to 1912. Those were owned by the grandchildren. When Goff wrote his book, Robert's grandchildren did not allow him to look at them. So those are now in Illinois, so that was a big chunk. But just, a lot of letters that Robert wrote, and there are thousands all over the country. A lot of them just weren't known. They hadn't been donated. They hadn't been discovered in someone's attic or what have you. But also, a major reason is that Robert has just been ignored. People think he hated his parents. He was embarrassed by his father's, humble upbringings, and that he knew nothing about his father's rise, his father's presidency, and that he cared even less. So therefore, nobody has gone to look at Robert's papers, just assuming there would be nothing there, which is, it was great for me because every day I found something new, unknown, unpublished, not just about Robert, but about his father and his mother and his brothers and the Civil War and his father's presidency and the assassination. It was unbelievable what I found. And it was a little disappointing to think it was all there and nobody had ever looked for it, but I got to find it, so it's fun.
Well, how did he get to have such a negative image and kind of be the villain of the family?
There's really 3 reasons, in my opinion, why Robert has become the villain. One is because he was a captain of industry, millionaire. A lot of people think, therefore, he was a cold, ruthless, selfish, avaricious CEO, which was so unlike his father that Robert disdained the common person, and therefore, being unlike his father, that's just awful. The second reason is that he had his mother committed, which has been warped and twisted to mean that he's a cold, heartless, horrible man who wanted to steal her money, which is a ludicrous idea, but it persists. The third reason, which is probably the biggest reason, one single book, Mary Todd Lincoln, a biography by Jean Baker, 1987. That book did more than anything to destroy Robert's reputation. If you look in that book, Robert is the most despicable, disgusting, reprehensible son, man, human being on the face of the earth. And since that is the one book about Mary that everybody always goes to, that is everyone's perception of Robert. And it's funny, if you ask people, that's typically where they get their ideas about him from. And they're all wrong.
All?
Absolutely.
Interestingly, I found, I'm a son of a shrink, so as you know, I've said that before, but I found that the eldest son of successful men often try to emulate their dads and overshoot the mark and become more serious and reserved even. I think that's one of the reasons that he's been looked on poorly, because he's been so reticent, and maybe he was thinking he would look humble like his father by being reticent and not coming forth. He didn't show himself. Neither did his dad, but at least we know others saying that he was, a jovial guy many times, except during depressions. So you think that why was he so reticent? Why did he do that to himself and his character out here in the nation?
Well, actually, Robert, it's interesting, he was a hilarious guy. He told great jokes, just like his father. But he only showed that side of himself to very close friends and family, so most people didn't know that. But basically, Robert decided in 1965, not long after the assassination, he decided, he could either be his own man or he could forever be his father's son. And he decided to be his own man. He decided never to write about his father, which he didn't. He later regretted that decision, but decided it was too late to rectify, which, of course, drives me crazy. But
how old was he how many years before his death when he came to that decision?
That was probably after the turn of the 20th century. It was definitely as he was getting older. And, he said, well, I don't know that I can remember it all anyways. But, he wrote about it in hundreds, thousands of letters that I found. But I think Robert just wanted to live his own life. And he was, he very conscientiously never said or did anything that could possibly impact his father's legacy. So, for example, his father was the great emancipator. In the 19-teens, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and some other African-American groups wanted Robert, as president of the Pullman Company, to desegregate Pullman cars and take the first step towards equalizing, between the races. And Robert said no. He said, no, it won't help you. It will kill Pullman business. And as the president, I can't do that. But I personally think that another reason is that if he did that, and they said, you're the son of the great emancipator, be the next emancipator. And, the best way to turn Robert off was to allude to his father, that he should do something because of his father. And that's usually when he wouldn't do it.
Interesting.
Because he didn't want to step in. His father was one person, he was another.
Well, I might ask both of you, but Ken, Mary kind of brought you to this marriage, in a way. How do you assess her character? Who was she anyway?
She was the daughter of a prominent aristocratic slave-owning family. Just as Abraham Lincoln had to overcome his heritage, which was the opposite extreme, a very poor white, non-slave-holding agricultural family with little education, with, it said, little ambition, and few connections of any importance in society and politics. In a sense, Mary Todd had to come over the opposite problem. She was a daughter, a woman, who was raised to be outspoken, to engage in politics. She was a passionate Whig. She spoke her mind politically. She got involved in political campaigns. She was used to commanding servants, slaves, white servants throughout her life. And so she was known for being overbearing toward people she considered lessers in society. In that sense, Abraham Lincoln and Mary Todd had to grow in opposite directions and meet in the middle. Mary Lincoln resented the proscription of women from the political arena. Of course, they could not vote or hold office. They were expected to be supportive, but not to express partisan opinions. They were to be Republican mothers raising good citizens, and then raising sons, in this case, Robert Todd Lincoln, who would become politically active, political leaders and captains of industry. She tried to bend those rules to insert herself personally in the political process, And of course, in the 19th century, the best, if not the only way for a woman to do that was to support her husband. She was passionately supportive. She was Abraham Lincoln's greatest admirer.